Did you know that email marketing, as in newsletters, promo emails to your subscribers, delivers about a $42 return on every $1 that you spend on average? Friend, that is a 4,200% return. So the fun doesn't just stop there. Newsletters on platforms like Beehive are actually seeing open rates of nearly 39%. In fact, my personal open rates tend to be anywhere from 50 to 60% very easily. So if you are sending out a podcast newsletter, then we need to talk and we need to be intentional, because this email marketing has always been the biggest ROI for all of the efforts that we're putting in for really driving people where we want them to go. And we need to start being super intentional. So if your podcast newsletter is just like a new episode live or a generic link drop, I actually believe that you're leaving a little bit of an opportunity on the table. So in this episode, I'm going to talk to you all about how to write weekly or monthly podcast newsletters that your audience actually wants to read. Emails that build connection, curiosity, and consistent growth, and driving people to your show. And not only that, nurturing them long term so that every single week they know that you drop that newsletter on Tuesday along with your episode. And not only are they excited to read your newsletter, but they're also excited to listen to your episode. I'm so passionate about this topic. I think newsletters are such a special little area of our business that we can really pour into, especially when AI rules these days, right? And so in this episode, we are actually going to go through 3 newsletter formats that you can use right now. They are weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, plus key writing tips and trips to make every email actually land. And here's the best part. If you want more guidance on any of the things that I talk about today on how to write newsletters that I call like blockbuster newsletters, you can actually grab my brand new product, Podcast Growth Toolkit, for only $47. So this is not only going to train you on the exact framework that I use for creating these newsletters, plus tips on how making them kind of a fan favorite email in your audience's inbox, but I'm also going to show you how to enhance your show's organic searchability, increase SEO ranking on platforms like Google, and how to create a podcast-centric lead magnet that will always convert way better than just driving people to one single podcast episode. So you can grab all of that for $47. That's it, by heading to podcastmarketinghub.com/toolkit. Or if you want to head to Instagram, go ahead, comment toolkit on any post I have, and then I'll send it your way. All right, let's get into it. So when I think back over the years of working with creators who have thousands of podcast downloads, great content, but what seemed to be happening was their email kind of felt like a side project. Like the email that aligned with that episode was always like the last thing we dove into, right? They'd send an email only when the episode dropped, and the subject line would be like new episode live. And while honestly that works a little bit, and it's not, I'm actually going to share how that works. It can be one way that we can do it, but it's not the perfect or the best way to necessarily build loyalty, to nurture your people. And it's not going to get the best open rates out of the 3 types of emails that I'm going to share with you today. Now, I'm not saying that there is no space or no way to be using that specific email where it's all about like one specific episode. In fact, I'm going to share about that today. But what I am saying is that we probably won't see our open rates or the conversions quite as great with that than another style of newsletter. So let's go through the 3 newsletter formats that I recommend, which will help you really write with purpose every time, right? Because when we are consistent, we know that format builds trust. It drives open rates. It drives click-through rates. And it also helps to grow your podcast and drive your audience to your new episode effectively and efficiently. Okay, so let's dive in. The first format, so this is a newsletter format that I want to share with you, is going to allow you to take the episode that you dropped and kind of expand a little bit more so that you can start to create that relationship and that nurture piece with your audience. Okay. So this one is kind of what I call the highlight and hook email. It's really simple. It's pretty flexible. And honestly, if you're strapped for time, it's definitely the most effective. So here's how it works. You start with a short hook. This might be a story, a relatable moment, or even like a bold insight that came up in your latest episode. And then you connect it to a few takeaways from your specific episode. And then you finish with a clear link to listen to the episode. So, for example, maybe you had kind of a wild week wrangling your kids plus deadlines, maybe something funny or frustrating happened that tied into your podcast topic. That's your opening hook. You share it in a way that feels really real and relatable. And then you say, this week on the podcast, I'm diving into whatever it is, 3 strategies I use to stay on track, even when everything feels chaotic. So yes, you are in this specific type of newsletter focusing on just one episode. But instead of just saying, by the way, I dropped an episode and then diving right into essentially what we're seeing is we're seeing people take their transcript and then asking AI to just bust out a newsletter. People know that they're doing it, right? Because it feels very bland. But when you integrate a little bit of a life story, a learning lesson, it becomes a little bit more enjoyable to read. This format does a really great job of creating connection first and then delivering value. But what I will say is it's not my favorite way to go. And I'll share why, because I think we can just lean into newsletters a little bit more. We can really pour into them. But again, if you're strapped for time and you are just I need to get a newsletter out because I want to nurture, which also I want to say, I do just want you to get a newsletter out. And I don't want it to be not great, but I do want you to at least be driving people to your show on a regular basis, especially your subscribers, because those are going to be the warmest leads that you have in your audience, warmer than Instagram, warmer than LinkedIn, all of that, right? So you need to make a connection with them. If you are strapped for time and all you can do is take the transcript from the episode that you dropped that week, drop it into ChatGPT, ask for, a little bit of a newsletter about that episode, and then go back and add a story or a little bit of a hook or an aha moment or a lesson that you've learned within that week. It's going to feel a little bit juicier, right? It's going to feel like you put a little bit more effort into it, which we want. We want that because we want people to look forward to your email and not just feel like, oh, if I want to know what is on the podcast, I'll just go look at Apple. I'll just go look at Spotify and then stop paying attention to your email, right? So that is what can happen with this one. So it works. It's not my favorite, but it works. And especially if you're strapped for time and you just want to make sure you're getting that connection point with your subscribers, this way can work, right? Okay. So the second kind of format that I like it's my personal favorite. It's the one that I consistently get the most replies from. I also have done the format I just shared with you and this format, and my open rates are significantly higher with this type of format. I call it the lifestyle roundup. And the reason that I think this style of newsletter is getting not only more attention, but also more opens and people are liking it more is because our inbox is full of newsletters and emails and things get lost in there. And if you aren't finding a way to stand out and giving so much value and also inviting your subscribers into your world, then it's really hard to make your email something that they're excited to open or something that feels like it's going to give them value. And so again, this is why I love this one. I think again, in a time where AI is it's so great, right? We love it. And right when it came out, everybody was just give me a newsletter. Here's the transcript. People got bored with them. They got bored with those emails because they're this is clearly AI written. Now, I'm not saying that you can't use AI with this format, but what I do find personally, because I do use AI when I write it, but I do have to sit down. I have to pour more input into it. I need to come up with the bullet points that I want to talk about or that I want the newsletter to really talk about. I have to do a little bit of research. So it does take me a little bit more time, but I feel that me doing that, it's kind of like where I pour into my audience, right? I definitely use AI for so many things and it's so helpful, but this newsletter is like it's like my story and my love letter to my subscribers every single week, right? So by the way, if you're not on my newsletter, be sure you are. You can head to podcastmarketinghub.com/subscribe. But honestly, my weekly newsletter is like a love letter to my subscribers. I share personal things. I'm going to get into like what I like to share, but that is why I like this one so much. I think that's also why we're seeing people gravitate towards this more than just by the way, I dropped a brand new episode this week. All right. So what are the things you might be sharing in this, right? What makes up a lifestyle roundup type newsletter? So you might share what you're loving right now. It can be something related to your podcast, something related to your business, something totally not related at all, very lifestyle related. Like for instance, I will share something within the podcast industry that I'm loving. Maybe it's a microphone or maybe it's a whatever. Or I also might share the glass Tupperware that I got that I love, or the bamboo sheets that I ordered for my daughter's crib that we're loving that are so soft. So it's just a very like flexible section of your lifestyle newsletter. The next thing is a quick behind the scenes note. So again, this is how I open up these newsletters for me. So I'll be sharing things that are on my mind. Maybe it's like season change, or maybe we're going into Q4 and I'm just, I'm analyzing like what I want to get done for the next quarter or my goals or what I have achieved. Or honestly, sometimes I'm just like, I don't really have much to share, but I'm just grateful. Like I'm just grateful that people are opening my newsletter. People are listening to my podcast. People are in my world. I have students. Like sometimes it's just a matter of saying thanks for being here. And that's totally okay. Sometimes it's like a fun story that you link back to what's on your show that week, or it can be so many things. Again, I love this style of newsletter because it does allow so much flexibility within what we talk about and what we share and how we connect with our audience. And like we're podcasters, we have no shortage of things to share. So having the newsletter as an outlet is a great way to do this. One other note I'll say is because you're pouring a little extra juice into this lifestyle newsletter, these are things you can all use on your social media platform, right? These are all content or reel or story or carousel bits that you can take from your newsletter and then put into a reel or a carousel or share in your stories, all of those things, right? Okay, another thing I like to share is a tool or a tip of the week. So sometimes I will, again, share like, I am loving Riverside FM for recording. It never lets me down, yada, yada, whatever it might be. Or I also might share a tip. And so actually something that I do often is I will take free resources I've already created and I'll just link them up directly in that email. And I'll say, by the way, if you're struggling with, doing your project management or setting up your podcast project management flow in a way that feels really good and supportive and not like you're falling behind, then I created this training. You can just grab it below. And I just link directly to it. Why? Because these people are already on my email list. I don't need them to give me their email to get access to it. It's just a value add, right? So I tend to do that a lot. And also it drives traffic to my free resources that I've created. I have them sitting there. Why not get eyes on them? I also always try to include an industry update or a trend that I'm paying attention to. It's kind of like my mentor. Like my mentor is great at Instagram. She pays attention to the updates that I need to know. And then she tells me. I try to do that for my subscribers. I want to let them know, hey, there's a new industry update that you want to know about or something coming down the pipeline that you should be, thinking about using, or do you have these things turned on in Spotify, whatever it might be that they don't know. And also, like, it's not their full-time job to be paying attention to the podcast industry. So I will do that for them. And so I truly believe that this is a big piece of why people like being on my newsletter and why I have such good open rates, because they know that I've got their back and that they don't have to go and do more research and more paying attention when they already are trying to hold so many things. I got them, right? Okay. And then of course, always I share what is on the podcast that week. Right. So that's actually what I have at the end, which sometimes I'll mention something early on in the newsletter and link to that episode. But generally I'll have like a section that's on the pod this week. So anyways, That's the format I love. Those are the things I love to include. I feel like this email is really powerful because it positions you as a trusted guide, not just another podcaster trying to promote your content, which is fine, right? There's no bad things about that, but it really does position you as a guide, as a friend, as the go-to person that they want to go to in that industry, and also top of mind. Because your audience, they get to know you. They get to know your personality, your opinions, your world, like your family, whatever it might be. And that builds the kind of trust that keeps people reading and listening week after week. Okay, so the last format that I'm going to share with you is called the monthly roundup. So you may be thinking, Kylie, weekly emails feel like way too much right now. Whether you have too much on your plate to really bust out a weekly newsletter, or maybe you have a type of audience that just doesn't really engage with newsletters, which we can talk about that another time, but that's fine. You can still build consistency with what I call a monthly roundup. So this is a roundup that lets you batch basically like 1 month of your podcast content or kind of the lifestyle stuff and still stay top of mind with your listeners. Okay, so there's actually 2 ways that you can go about this. And one is really like this monthly roundup. It's pretty simple. You basically take the episodes that you released over the last month and you put them into an email. I definitely recommend doing some lifestyle pieces here as well, right? So you can actually just take the lifestyle format that I just went through. And then instead of like on the podcast this week, you can do on the podcast this month, and you can literally link up to your titles. So you could do that. So that's one way. If you just are like, let's start out with 1 newsletter a month, I can do that. I can handle it. Still keeps me top of mind, still gets the podcast in front of them. Or another way you can kind of use this format is, and this actually, I want to say can be on top of if you are doing weekly newsletters and you just notice maybe your podcast metrics have dipped that month, or there's like a holiday theme, or there's some kind of theme coming up that you want to create an email around. That is a great way to utilize this as well. So for instance, sometimes around Thanksgiving, so November historically, starting around Thanksgiving all the way through Christmas, we tend to see, podcast metrics take a dip because people are busy. But what I like to do is around Thanksgiving, I'll actually round up a handful of my top performing podcast episodes and I'll put them into an email that's basically, hey, I just wanted to give you my top performing podcast episodes in a little playlist because I know you're going to be driving or food prepping or, creating your Thanksgiving meal. And I wanted you to be able to download them, pop your earbud in, and just do whatever you need to do over the holidays. So, enjoy these episodes. Be sure you download them, yada, yada. It's kind of like just a way to go above and beyond deliver. Another way you can use this is not even like holiday related, but purely almost like theme related. So for instance, let's say that you have a podcast that kind of explores being a parent to young children or toddlers, and you bring on experts to talk about various things that parents will deal with during the toddler phase. And maybe you've had maybe 3 or 4 episodes that are specifically about picky eating. So you can send out an email that says like, this is for those of you struggling with a picky eater at home. And then you can literally list out your 3 or 4 episodes that are specifically about that and be like, hey, I was just thinking about you. Or, I've had a lot of people in my DMs asking questions about picky eaters. So I brought back my top performing episodes about picky eating. I rounded them up for you. Here they are. Okay. So that can literally go out at any time, right? That can go out even if you're emailing weekly. You can send it as like a courtesy ad. Or if you do a monthly roundup, you don't have to do the episodes from that month. You can just do like a theme. For instance, if your audience is they're entrepreneurs online, you can do a list building roundup, whatever it is. But there's a lot of fun ways to use this approach. And whether it be the only email that you do every month, or if it's like, maybe once a quarter, you add an extra email within that quarter that you send out. And it's either like a themed roundup or like a holiday roundup or something like that. So it doesn't have to be fancy. It works very, very well when you keep it simple. But I love this for just giving our podcast metrics a little bit of a boost and reminding subscribers of episodes that they may have missed, and then just giving your content new life, right? The content that you have created in the past, bring it back. Now, before we actually wrap up, I want to give you just a few quick but powerful tips for making your newsletters so much better. So first, keep your design simple. A clean header if you want. You can create an image in Canva is more than enough. You do not have to complicate it. I actually did this for a long time and then decided to remove it. So it really just depends on what you want. Like I like to just dive into the content, but depending on your business, if you have more of an artistic edge to your business, maybe like a Canva image at the top can always be great. The second one is to nail your subject line, right? We want to do curiosity. We want something to be clear, outcome driven language, like all of those things. And there's so many great subject line testers. My two favorite are subjectline.com or omnisend.com. And you can just play around with subject lines and see how they rank. And so I usually try and get like 90% or higher on either of these websites to see how my subject line will do. I always do an A/B testing with my subject lines. That's really important. And over time, especially over time, when you do A/B testing, you'll start to see what patterns your audience tends to gravitate towards so that you can use that for your subject lines. All right. Another one is to make it easy. What I love to do is to add clickable badges of Apple, Spotify, and YouTube into my newsletter so that my readers can click on whichever platform they prefer and it'll take them directly to the episode. I like to use the badges because their brain automatically goes, oh, that's an Apple badge. Oh, that's a Spotify badge. Oh, that's the YouTube badge. And they know their preference for listening. So then they'll click that and then they'll listen or watch, whatever. So those are so easy to grab. You can literally go grab badges anywhere online. Like you can just Google them. Very easy. Another one is to personalize first names. So anytime you are collecting an email from your audience, please, please, please ask for at least the first name because then you can customize the subject line. You can customize the body of the email, the hello section. And I do feel like sometimes these tiny touches just make your email feel more personal. And then lastly, one thing that I highly recommend. So I want to talk about the badges again, but then also be mindful about when you're sending your emails. Sometimes I've talked to female entrepreneurs who are like, well, I don't want to be an inconvenience. So I send it like Friday night so they can read it over the weekend. And I'm like, no, we are not like putting something out on a Friday night, hoping they'll read it during the weekend. Like people read it in the moment. They don't go, oh, I'm going to read that. I'm going to sit with my coffee and read that this weekend. Not generally. So what I recommend you do is find that sweet spot when you're sending your email to boost open rates, to boost click-through rates. See, because I send every week, I like to send it on Tuesday. Why? Because that's when my podcast drops. And I aim to get as many listeners as I can to my podcast in the first 72 hours. So I send Tuesday morning. I then send again Thursday morning to those who did not open my Tuesday email. And so one of my clients added the badges because their click-through rates were like 0.01, like not good. And they were sending on Friday night. And I was like, what if you sent Thursday morning? They changed it. Not only did they see their open rates, I think they like improved by 20%, but they also ended up with like a 14% click-through rate. So I'm telling you, these little tweaks work. So take the time to do them. Okay. And then lastly, don't be afraid to add a little personality. Sometimes a well-placed GIF, Giphy, whatever you call it, can really make an email fun, feel human, just like laid back and flowy. Okay, so here's the big takeaway. Your podcast newsletter is not just about dropping a link or dropping hey, dropped a new episode, go check it out. It's about building relationships. It's about inviting your audience into your world week after week, if you can, and then giving them value that keeps them excited to hit play on your next episode, right? And if this all feels like, oh man, I could use a little extra help here, I've got you. I've created the podcast growth toolkit to make this whole process 10 times easier. Inside, you'll find plug and play templates, a keyword bank starter, a step-by-step prompt to help you write these engaging podcast newsletters in half the time. Again, it's only $47, so you can go grab it. That's podcastmarketinghub.com/toolkit. So you can go and grab it there. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I can't wait to see how you implement these newsletter strategies, and I will see you next week.